Now to a scandal that changed French politics. Former Prime Minister Francois Fillon goes on trial this Monday, accused of misappropriating €1 million of public money, giving it to his wife and children for work they never actually did. The Fillon affair came to light during the presidential elections of 2017, of which Emmanuel Macron went on to win. Once elected, Macron did change laws. Politicians no longer allowed to employ family members, but the trial begins just as public distrust among their elected officials seems to remain as high as ever. To take a closer look at the situation, we're joined by Richard Worley, the Paris correspondent for Swiss paper Le Temps. Thanks so much for being with us.
Good morning.
Now, you covered the Fillon affair at the time. Remind us a bit about the scandal and how people were reacting to it at the time.
Well, you have to keep in mind that Francois Fillon was seen as the favorite of this presidential election in 2017. He won the primary of the Conservative Party over Alain Juppé and over Nicolas Sarkozy, his former boss, because Fillon was the Prime Minister of Sarkozy when Sarkozy was president. So the push for Fillon was really good. He thought that he could land in the Élysée Palace. Then came the story revealed by the Canard Enchaîné in January 2017. He was suspected to have paid his wife for many years as parliamentary assistant while she was not carrying any real work. She was overpaid compared to other parliamentary assistants, and he could not even now bring any written proof of the work she actually did. Plus, later on, she also took another job at a magazine, La Revue des Deux Mondes, for which the owner, Marc Ladré de la Charrière, who is a French billionaire, he finally decided to plead guilty, and he was sentenced in 2018. So we have a proof there that during that stint, Pénélope Fillon, François Fillon's wife, did receive a salary from that billionaire without actually performing any job.
So I guess what the French public will be looking for this week is to see consequences from all of that. What do you expect in this trial?
Well, first of all, we have to know if the trial is really going to start today, because there is this lawyer strike, and we've been informed that there is a possibility that the trial will be postponed until Wednesday. But I believe it will then go on until the 11th of March. And the key question is, can François Fillon and his wife Pénélope bring any proof of the actual work she did? What he is saying is that she was mainly in his constituency, in the department of Sarthe, and she was linking him and the voters and the real people. He said that her job was to go to the villages, to represent him in functions and so on. But even there, investigators have not been able to show any proof of her real work. And don't forget that there was this video, I believe, taken by an English newspaper, Daily Telegraph, where she was admitting that she never really worked for her husband, and she didn't like that.
Indeed, it didn't work as his assistant. Now, when you look at it, after François Fillon, as you were saying, he had been leading the race. In the end, he was knocked out in the first round of those presidential elections. Since Emmanuel Macron got into office, he changed the laws. Politicians can no longer employ their family. But do you think that's led to the French having more trust in their politicians in any way?
I do not know if it had an impact on the trust, but clearly it changed the work for the parliamentarians. François Fillon came, I would say, from another era. He came from an era where parliamentarians were able to do close to whatever they want with the money they receive from the National Assembly or from the Senate, because he was also a senator. He employed his children while he was a senator. That has completely changed. You said it. It's not possible to employ any family member anymore. And everything that you do with public money is now scrutinized. So there is a big change. Now it's also bringing constraint on parliamentarians. And it is true, and I think it is fair to listen to that, it is true that MPs sometimes have more trust in their wife or husband to carry work, and that would maybe make sense to keep it, but the law has changed anyway. And François Fillon had also another problem, which I believe was a problem with money. He did a very fine, brilliant career in politics, but he also got richer than he was, and probably the trial is going to dig in whether the money he acquired was through his political mandate or through actual work. He's now working for an investment fund mainly present in Russia. He has said that he will not come back into French politics, but we'll see. For him, it will be, I would say, the test of truth, and the test of sincerity, because one thing you have to keep in mind, which is the background of that trial. During the presidential campaign, he kept saying that he was a man of morale, he was a man of real rigor compared to Sarkozy.
Indeed, he kept saying you have to be irreproachable if you want to take on the office of president. But tell me, Mr. Worley, how does this compare to other countries abroad?
Well, clearly, if you look at neighboring countries of France, you remember the scandal in the UK regarding the expense of the MP. That has been treated, the laws have changed. In Switzerland, that clearly would not be possible. MPs are much more scrutinized than it is the case in France. So I believe it is seen as a proof that France is entering a new era in politics, and the gap between elected officials and the people is narrowing, and I believe it's a good thing. Now, again, it's important to keep an eye on the fact. The National Assembly is now asking Fillon and his wife to be reimbursed for €1 million. That is the amount of money. So we'll see whether Fillon lawyers are able to prove that Penelope Fillon did actual work for her husband. That's the key point, and at the moment, it's not been proven.
And it'll be a fascinating trial if and when it does get started. We'll have to leave it there, but thanks so much for coming in and giving us your insight into that Fillon story. Now, if you're just joining us, these are our top stories. Towns and cities on shutdown, sports events, carnivals cancelled. Countries around the world bringing in new measures to try and stop the spread of COVID-19, that new coronavirus. South Korea in particular reporting a sharp rise in the number of infections. 10 years after WikiLeaks published hundreds of classified US military documents, founder of the website Julian Assange in court in London fighting extradition hearing. In the United States, he's wanted on espionage charges that carry a maximum sentence of 175 years behind.